Row for Show Productions presents Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted podcast. Welcome to Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Hamilton Jr., and this is episode 54. Episode 54 of the Undrafted podcast. Man, so thankful to be here with you today. We got a great show for you today. In the Low with Row, we're going to talk about the Raptors versus the Warriors, the Game 1 reaction. That was a great game between those two squads on Thursday night. In I'm In and I'm Out, Chris Harris Jr. and the Denver Broncos agreed to a restructured deal, and I'll give you my thoughts on that. In What's the Wave with Chef Row Daddy, going to talk about, got a few questions. Everybody seemed to like the new format, the new question and answer format that debuted on last week's podcast. We're going to keep that going. I have questions that's coming in from, the best time to eat and how should you go about buying clothes when you're dropping weight. So I have those answers for you from my own experience in that segment. And then, and this is some bull jive, there was a toddler that was hit by a foul ball this past week at a Major League Baseball stadium. How much more does Major League Baseball want before they decide to do something about the netting in their stadiums? Well, without further ado, let's get into it with The Low with Row. The 2019 NBA Finals started Thursday night between the Raptors and the Warriors, nearing the conclusion of one of the most boring NBA playoff series that we've had in a while. The playoffs just aren't the same without my dog LeBron James on the court. Now, this particular Finals series is a catch-22 kind of, well, not for me, because on one hand, I really don't want to see Golden State win another title. Like, I'm sick and tired of Golden State winning titles. And I know, people may say that's sour grapes and, people hate winners, people hate greatness, da-da-da-da. It's not so much about me hating teams that win or hating greatness. I'm just tired of Golden State. They hot dog whenever they front run, whenever things are going really, really well. And then when they hit some adversity, it's like the train just falls off the tracks and they just can't handle it. Like, I'm tired of them. And they're also just a boring story to me. We already know what's going to happen with Golden State. So, yeah, if somebody else could come and take the NBA title from the Warriors, that would be absolutely great. Now, some people don't really like the antics that Drake has brought to the finals. But me personally, I don't have a problem with Drake. Maybe there's an argument that maybe he could tone it down a little bit. But me personally, I don't have a problem with Drake. Drake has worked extremely hard to be where he's at. He's also the official global ambassador of the Raptors. So Drake is doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. And on top of that, he's from Toronto, so of course he's going to pull hard for the hometown team. I don't have an issue with Drake acting a fool at all. Because here's the thing, I don't mind rowdy and loud fans because those kinds of fans are what make sports fun. The most boring fans that you can have at a sporting event are the wine and cheese crowd. Give me the common Joe who goes to work every day with his lunch pail 9 to 5 and who's going, drink beer, eat hot dogs, and get loud. Those are the kind of people that bring the spirit of sports, man. I love it. Now, I've been to some Broncos games, and, man, those fans up there, man, going to the stadium up there, when the defense is on the field, the fans, they stomp their feet. And they literally stomp their feet so hard, the ground of the stadium shakes. If you watch some of the Sunday night broadcast that the Broncos have been featured on, Al Michaels, he always makes a point to talk about some of their cameras in the stadium. When the defense is on the field, the camera angles are actually shaking because of all of the rowdiness, and it's so loud in there because of the way the stadium is constructed. So when fans yell, it literally comes down, and it's awesome. It's one of the many reasons why I love the Broncos and I love going to their games. It's loud, it's rowdy, and that's what makes sports so great. Now, I've been to a few Cowboys games here in Dallas as well, and that is a great atmosphere as well. It's not quite as loud as Denver, and I think part of that has to do with the way the stadium is constructed. But I went to a Cowboys and Eagles game back in 2016 with me, my dad, and my cousin. And, man, that game was awesome because it was a roller coaster game. That was a game where they went into overtime and Jason Witten caught it at the back of the end zone to give Dallas the win. And, man, that atmosphere in there, those fans, they were loud. They were ready, man. So, loud and rowdy fans, They are part of what makes sports so fun. But now, as far as Drake, I don't really have an issue with what he's doing. I mean, part of me, there's one part of me is like, hey, I love it, do what you do. There's another part of me that says, okay, he could possibly sit down just a little bit, but hey, you know what, at the end of the day, do what you do. Now, if the Raptors do win this finals, though, that brother in that city is going to be super lit. Sometimes I wonder if Toronto wins this finals, I wonder if they're going to do like Denver did back in 1998 when the Broncos won their first Super Bowl. I mean, they were flipping cars. They were setting cars on fire. They straight up destroyed downtown Denver, basically. I mean, those people, man, I still remember the news clips watching that back home in Amarillo, man. They got buck wild up there. Toronto's probably going to be a lot like that if that happens. I mean, this is the first NBA Finals game that's been held outside of the United States. So, I mean, they're making a lot of history across different aspects with this game. It's the first game that's the first NBA Finals game held outside of the United States. Toronto, they were the first team to put Golden State in a 0-1 hole since the Golden State's went on their consecutive 5-year run in the NBA Finals. Now, it's unlikely, personally, that Toronto beats this team. I mean, Golden State, they're Golden State. I mean, they're champions for a reason. This team is extremely hard to beat in a 7-game series. Even without Kevin Durant, this team is extremely hard to beat. Now, on the flip side, like I said, speaking of Kevin Durant, you kind of have to wonder if Golden State wins this title without him. You have to wonder, what does that do to his legacy? Steph Curry, people were talking about in that last series that Golden State played against Portland, how Steph Curry and Klay, they found the rhythm. They were playing so much more free, so much more free-flowing. The ball movement was better, yada, yada, yada. But, part of that, after seeing that game on Thursday night, part of that was because they were playing a Portland team that is inferior to this Toronto team because, man, Toronto, they straight up put it on Golden State Thursday night. And, with Kevin Durant is simply a luxury who makes Golden State basically unbeatable, especially across a 7-game stretch of games in a series. So, speaking of that game on Thursday night, I'll go ahead and get right into that. Toronto, man, that game Thursday night, Toronto played a great game. They came out gritty. They came out aggressive. They came out and punched Golden State in the mouth. Pascal Siakam was the player of the game. That dude, he had an amazing game. I mean, Siakam, he's just basically went off. 32 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks, a steal, and he was 14 of 17 in shooting. Then Toronto, like I said, they just came out and they straight up punched Golden State in the mouth. Siakam, he was giving Golden State that work inside. I mean, now he had some really nice shots all night, especially those quick flips, those floaters and things like that, especially in the paint. Siakam was putting in that work, and he straight up acted a fool in the third quarter. I mean, I looked away for what felt like, maybe 2 seconds. And man, next thing I know, this dude has 14 points in the third quarter with 4 minutes and 10 seconds left. At one point in the game, he hit 11 consecutive shots. I mean, that's how on fire Siakam was in this game. Now, to be honest with you, I haven't watched a whole lot of Raptors games this season, but there was one name that I consistently kept hearing whenever I would listen to, the sports networks and the highlights and things like that, and it was this guy, Pascal Siakam. And Thursday night, I found out why. Kawhi Leonard, superstar Kawhi Leonard. Now, Kawhi, he got off to a slow start Thursday night. He came into the game averaging 31 points a game in the playoffs. Now, he was 2 for 7 in field goals going into the third quarter, but he ended up picking it up, and he finished with 23 points, 8 boards, and 5 assists. Now, he hit a 3 late in the game that was basically the dagger for Golden State in this one. Now, this performance by Toronto supporting cast really shows that not only, one, do they have a really good bench, and really good role players that really know how to do what they do well. But this shows that they don't need Kawhi Leonard to be Superman to win. And the really good thing for Toronto right now is Kawhi, he kind of looks like he might be injured just a tad bit. He doesn't look like he's 100. He doesn't look like he's quite 100%. Speaking of Toronto's role players, Fred VanVleet, that brother right there had himself a great game. Now, he scored 7 points in 7 minutes, and he came off the bench. He kind of cooled down later on in the game because ultimately he scored 15 points for the night. But he locked down on defense. He straight up locked down on Steph Curry. And the thing is, Toronto's defense was all over Golden State like white on rice. Because if VanVleet or anybody sold out to the perimeter to stop Steph from dropping a 3, another Raptor would simply just move inside to prevent the easy shot. They were all over Golden State Thursday night as far as their defense goes. I did not realize Toronto's defense is as good as it is, but those brothers locked down on Golden State. And as for Golden State, I mean, they basically straight up got dominated. Now, when you look at the score, Toronto ended up winning that game 118-109. But when you look at the score, it's easy to say, well, Ro, that's 9 points. That's not necessarily domination. But this game was not as close as the score would have you indicate, because Golden State, a big thing that kept Golden State in the game was free throws, because Golden State was 21 for 21 on free throws going late into the third quarter. Now, the biggest thing that helped seal the L for Golden State was turnovers. They had 16 turnovers that led to 17 points for Toronto. That's your big pendulum swing and the difference between your W and your L right there. Steph Curry, he finished with 34 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and he was 8 of 18 for shooting. But honestly, it felt like Steph Curry really didn't get into a rhythm. It felt like he really couldn't do what he normally does in game nights. I mean, Toronto harassed him on defense. I mean, the entire game. They double teamed him for most of the game. This is where Golden State really does miss KD. Now, what you're going to see probably is all of a sudden KD's calf is probably going to magically heal or magically be well enough for him to go in Game 3, especially if Golden State drops Game 2 on Sunday night. Now, Steph, he was double teamed for most of the night. They stayed in his grill, and they basically just kept him uncomfortable, man. They kept him contained. And, he got his shots and he got his points, don't get me wrong, but it just didn't look effortless for him like it normally does in a Steph Curry played game. He didn't look effortless in getting his shots off and things like that like he normally does. With them containing Steph like the way they did, it made it harder for them on offense because he couldn't get Klay and Draymond involved on offense like they normally would. It wasn't as freestyling. It wasn't as free-flowing as you would have expected it to be coming into the game. Now, with that, Klay still had 21 points in the game. Draymond, he still got a triple-double. I think it was his third straight. He had 10, 10, and 10. But the difference is if KD was in there, KD's so tall and he's so doggone big that he could basically just, say, give me the doggone ball and I'll just go score myself. But you know what? Enough about Golden State. Everybody and their mama is talking about Golden State. I'm happy for Toronto simply because this is their first time to the NBA Finals. This is their first time to the big dance. And as unlikely as it is, I would love to see these dudes win this whole thing. Now, as for Drake, he's got to be in the running for a Troll of the Year at this point because he cleverly trolled Golden State with a throwback Raptors jersey of Steph Curry's dad, Dell, who played for the Raptors for a few years. Now you saw him on the sidelines. He was trash-talking Steph. He was trash-talking Draymond and going on. That part had me rolling. Then there's a video clip that went viral of him and Draymond talking trash to each other, and he called Draymond trash, and they were jaw-jacking and going back and forth. And he did like this little condescending smile. And somebody on Twitter said, that's how your coworkers smile at you right before they snitch on you. And that had me laughing because it is so, so true. And I know from experience. Anyway, and the hometown crowd, man, that crowd was huge. They were a big difference in this game. There were even some of the NBA, like the national reporters that were saying out of all the NBA Finals games that they've covered, out of all the playoff games that they've covered, they've never been in an environment like that. It was so electric. You could feel the energy in that arena through the television screen. But now that that's game one, now the real test for Toronto begins because now that Golden State has some game tape on them, coming into that game, Golden State, these two teams weren't really all that familiar with each other. But now Golden State has tape on them. Now they can kind of better plan for them. They can see the things that Toronto does well. They can see the things that Toronto doesn't do so well. They can see their strengths. They can see their weaknesses. And now they can kind of better plan for them. Now, with all that being said, the question for Toronto is going to be, can they stay consistent enough and execute enough to bring this thing home? Let's move on to I'm in and I'm out. The Denver Broncos and Chris Harris Jr. agreed to a salary raise in 2019 instead of a full-fledged extension. Now, the deal will bump Chris Harris Jr.'s salary up from around $8 million this season to over $12 million for 2019. And at first, I didn't really agree with that because I'm like, dude, why are the Broncos giving him $12 million? Because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent after this season. I'm like, bro, why are they giving him a pay raise to up to $12 million or a little over $12 million? And he's potentially going to leave. I mean, this is potentially going to be the last season that we see him in Denver. And I was like, man, that doesn't really make sense that they would do his deal like that. But the more I thought about it and the more I did research on it, I came to the conclusion that this is a win-win. And I'm 100% in on the way the Broncos did this. Now, it's unconventional, and it's basically unprecedented. You generally don't see teams do stuff like this. But for the Broncos to do this, it shows goodwill with one of their star players who's done all the right things. Chris Harris Jr., he's done all the right things in the weight room, in the film room, on the field, in the community. I mean, he's truly one of their superstar players. I mean, this also looks good to potential free agents because here's a guy who took a hometown discount with the team thinking that they would be competitive. He took a hometown discount back in 2014 and under the premise that basically the Broncos would be competitive. They ended up winning the Super Bowl, of course, in 2015, but in the years since then, Denver has not been competitive by a long stretch. So Chris Harris Jr. started looking like, wait a minute, I took a 33% pay cut, or I gave y'all a 33% discount under the premise that because y'all told me we were going to be competitive. And we haven't been competitive, so now I want some of that money back that I gave y'all that discount on. And with this deal, this is basically the Broncos saying, hey, you know what? You know, this dude's been really good to us. Let's go ahead and let's do this and let's make this look good for both sides involved. And because it was getting real nasty there for a while, you know, he basically told the Broncos, look, you either give me an extension or give me more money or you can trade me. And there for a while, it really looked like they were going to end up trading him. I mean, this thing almost went left there for a little while. You know, again, this was a good move by the Broncos because, like I said, it shows potential free agents that the team, they operate in good faith. They're not trying to make promises and lowball dudes and then, you know, somebody who's at the end of his deal and basically then just give you the middle finger. So that's what I really liked about this deal. This also allows Chris Harris Jr. to play for the Broncos in 2019, see how he likes the new coaching staff that they have, see how he likes how they do things and things like that. See, it gives him a chance to see how the team performs. It gives him a chance to really scope out a lot of things concerning his career as far as the Broncos go, and then he can kind of make a decision from that point on. This also gives the Broncos a chance to look at things from their perspective and see if whether or not they want to pay Chris Harris Jr. to stay in 2020 and beyond. Now, one thing I really think that kind of scared the Broncos away from doing a long-term deal with Chris Harris Jr. You know, he's 30 years old. You know, most NFL teams, especially at the DB spot, they start getting weary of dudes once they get on the other side of 30. So they were looking at, hey, you know, he's 30 years old. He's getting older. You know, he's been in the league 8 years. You know, he was injured last year. Even though that injury wasn't as major as some people thought it was, he was injured last year. You know, when they start looking at stuff like that, when you start talking about injuries and age and everything else, teams get a little weary. So this was a really good deal for both sides. Now, part of this long-term deal as far as Chris Harris goes in 2020 and beyond, part of that's going to hinge on the development of Drew Lock going into 2020. Now, if Drew Lock can develop into the quarterback that the Broncos believe he can be, and if he can do that really quickly going into year 2 next year, then that will allow the Broncos to be able to let Joe Flacco go, and they can save his $19 million in cap space. Now, this is important because the Broncos, they've got quite a few guys coming up on contract deals. They got Adam Gotsis, who's going to need a new deal. Shelby Harris, he's at the end of his rookie deal. You got Will Parks, Justin Simmons, and there's a few other guys that they got coming up within the next year or two. So they're going to have to be able to save some money somewhere to sign future guys as well and not run the risk of tying up all this money in one man named Chris Harris Jr. So with this, like I said, this is a win-win for the team and the player. I like this because you generally don't see this happen. Generally, it's one side gets their way and another side has to basically compromise. But in this one, both sides win. It's all gravy. I'm looking forward to seeing what the Broncos and Chris Harris Jr. do in 2019. Hopefully, these fellas can get back to the playoffs because I'm tired of not seeing the Broncos in the NFL playoffs. Come on, fellas. What's the wave with Chef Rodaddy? Now, this is the part of the podcast where I talk about wellness. Yes, this is a sports and lifestyle podcast, and I talk about sports. I talk about athletes and things like that. Well, part of sports and part of being an athlete is taking better care of your body. Doing whatever you have to do to have your body be in the best shape possible for game day so that way you can get out there with the squad and help them bring home that W. Well, we take the same mentality here on the Undrafted podcast to everyday life. Doing what you need to do to make sure you're in the best shape possible, to make sure you're here as long as you can be here on God's green earth. and then to just be the best person that you can be, because health and wellness is not just about physical health. When you talk about health and wellness, you're talking about physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, making sure you're just well-rounded across multiple aspects of life. And I changed the format on What's the Wave with Chef Rodaddy because I still talk about recipes and things like that, but man, I started getting inundated with so many questions from people about my progress and things like that I was like, man, you know what? I need to just do something where I can answer a few questions and reach multiple people, or have a larger reach and reach more people, connect with more people. So I switched up the format, and so far y'all are loving it, so I'm gonna keep this going. Now, the first question that we have is, how many times a day should I eat to lose weight? And honestly, it doesn't really matter. When you're talking about weight loss, remember, weight loss is basically just maintaining a calorie deficit, portion control, drinking a lot of water, and of course, making sure you exercise. But when you're talking about weight loss is basically calories taken in are less than calories burned off or burned out. You know, that's really the weight loss at its simplest form. If you're taking in less calories than what your body's burning off, because fat is just nothing more than excess energy that the body has stored because the metabolism wasn't moving enough. Fat is just excess energy that the body has stored up. It's energy that the body has not used. So literally, if you're a person that's overweight or obese, you have a lot of energy just sitting up inside you that just needs to get out. And that's where the exercise part comes from. Now, with the calorie deficit, it's more about your diet than anything else. Remember, when it comes down to weight loss, it's 80% diet, 20% gym. The gym complements your diet, not the other way around. Your diet, your nutrition is your foundation. So as long as you stay in a caloric deficit, which for most people to maintain a caloric deficit, you're looking at anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 calories a day, just depending on how much you're working out, depending on your body type, depending on your genetics. I mean, there's so many different factors that go into it. But the easiest way that I found when it comes to food, eat a lot of lean protein, a lot of green vegetables, cut out a lot of the sugar. Definitely no soda. But when it comes down to if you have a sweet tooth, one thing that really works for me is, I eat 2 or 3 small servings of fruit a day. When it comes down to dessert, I eat a bowl of pineapples. I eat a bowl of grapes with a little bit of pineapple in there. I mean, that's my dessert every night, and I absolutely love it. Cut out the sugar, cut out the bad carbs, the bad starches, eat a lot of lean protein, green vegetables, drink a lot of water. I cannot overestimate how important it is for you to flush your system with plenty of water when you're trying to lose weight, when you're trying to flush out all this fat and toxins and things like that. So when it comes down to losing weight, it doesn't really matter how many times during the day that you eat. It matters more about what you eat throughout any part of the day. Question 2, will I gain weight if I eat past 9 p.m.? This is one of those weight loss myths, and I'm not really sure where this one started from, but that's absolutely not true. The time of day that you eat something doesn't matter. It's all about what you eat, not what time you eat it. Because I got homeboys that eat at 10:30, 11 o'clock consistently, and they don't gain any weight. Because the thing about it is, your body doesn't have like some magic alarm clock that says, hey, you know what, it's after 9 p.m. So, whatever Ro eats, I'm not going to store it. I'm not going to utilize it properly. I'm going to store it as fat, and then that's that. And then, come 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm just going to all of a sudden use this again. No, the body doesn't operate like that. If you're within your caloric deficit, or if you're maintaining your caloric deficit, if you're within that level and you eat something, eat like a piece of chicken and some vegetables, something like that, your body's going to utilize those calories properly. Now, if you're outside of your caloric maintenance, or you're outside of your caloric deficit and you eat junk food, then your body's going to use that and basically store it as fat. I mean, you have to think about it like this. When you were eating the junk food, when you were eating that trash and you were gaining all that weight, you were eating that stuff up more than likely up in the day, right? So if you're eating that stuff up in the day, it's not really going to matter whether or not what time you eat it. If you're eating pizza and burgers, burritos, fried foods, and all this stuff consistently, well, it doesn't really matter the time of day that you eat it. You're going to gain weight. I mean, that's just all it is to it. If you're eating all this stuff consistently and you're not working it off in the gym, or your metabolism is not fast enough to burn it off, you're going to gain that weight. Point blank, period. So no, the time of day does not matter. It's all about what you eat, not the time that you eat it. Because simply put, your metabolism and your body don't care what time you eat, but it does care what you eat. Question number 3. What's the best way to buy clothes when you're in the process of dropping weight? This is a really good question, and I get this question a lot because my body has changed dramatically, and I get this question a lot from people who are trying to lose weight or who are on the same journey that I'm on. And the thing that I always tell people, when it comes to clothes, when you're dropping weight, don't go out and buy a whole lot of clothes at one time. Buy a few shirts, buy a few pants, and buy a few belts at a time. And when it comes down to belts, I have one black belt and one brown belt, and that's it. I've had to buy belts. This is the brown and black belt that I have right now are the third pair of belts that I've had to buy since I've been on this journey. So while you're on this journey, man, your body is going to be changing because you're dropping inches off of your waist. You're dropping body fat. I mean, your body shape changes. The contour of your form, the contour of your shape changes as you go throughout this journey. So I always tell people, when it comes down to clothes, just buy a few pairs of pants and a few pairs of shirts at a time. Because if you're still dropping weight consistently, you're not going to keep those clothes very long. In a situation like this, the clearance rack and the sales rack, they are your best friend. Look for stores that have those continuous sales like JCPenney's, Kohl's, Ross. Try to get the value for your dollar when it comes to something like this. You want to get the best value for your dollar anyway. But when you're going through a situation like this where you're consistently having to change things in your wardrobe, you definitely want to look for the clearance rack and the sales rack, things that will stretch your money a little bit further. I know for me personally, I've had to basically redo my entire wardrobe, and I'm still not done reshaping my body. So this is a long journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So yeah, you don't want to buy a whole lot of clothes at one time. And I hear a lot of people rag on places like like Walmart, getting clothes from Walmart. Look, if Walmart fits your clothing budget, get your clothes from Walmart. You know your situation better than anybody else. And if your financial situation calls for Walmart clothes, buy Walmart clothes. You do what you do. Nobody has to know that they came from Walmart. I mean, nobody's going to walk around asking you, hey, where'd you get that? And if they do, you just tell them Walmart. I mean, at the end of the day, that ain't nothing to be ashamed of. And be thankful that you have the money to buy those clothes from Walmart. Because trust me, it's people out there that can't even afford that. So do what works best for you. Be smart and be frugal when it comes down to clothing and dropping weight in the process. Question 4, what's your favorite pie to eat on cheat day? And you know what? I was actually tempted to switch this question around because this was a really hard question because I love sweets. Like, I love desserts, man. Cakes, pies, ice cream, yogurt, frozen yogurt, man. It don't matter. Chocolate, candy, whatever it is. I have a sweet tooth like a mug. So with this one, it was kind of like, man, so I'm actually kind of glad they asked what kind of pie do I like to eat on cheat day. My favorite pie is a pecan pie. Hands down, pecan pie is the best pie. Pecan pie is God's gift to pie. Like, oh, Lord. Pecan pie is just so doggone good. Like, pecan pie is the one staple that I have to have. Like, when I go home to visit my family for Thanksgiving, we gots to have pecan pie. It's just like the dressing with the cranberry sauce. I got to have it. And I have to watch myself when I eat pecan pie or really any kind of sweet dessert because I like it. And at the end of the day, man, I have to watch myself with pecan pie because I'm one of those people when it's something that I really, really like, but I have to restrict my exposure to it. I have to go to the extreme because if I don't, I might just overdo it because I've been known to, sit there and eat, 3 or 4 pieces of pecan pie in one sitting on Thanksgiving. So, yeah, I have to really limit myself to pecan pie. And the thing is, as much as I love pecan pie, I might eat pecan pie 2 or 3 times out of the year. Like, I have to stay away from it because if not, I just love it so doggone much that I'm not going to eat just 1 piece. I'm eating probably 2 pieces. And I ain't talking about little pieces either. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to enjoy it. I'm just going to leave it at that. But, yeah, pecan pie, that's my favorite pie. Now, I don't always eat pecan pie on cheat day when it comes down to desserts. There are some cheat days. When I have cheat meals, I don't always eat dessert. There's some cheat meals that I don't even have dessert. Like, if I want something sweet, I'll just have my customary a bowl of grapes with pineapples. And sometimes on days that I have my cheat meals, I'll go get a piece of pecan pie, or I'll get a piece of chocolate cake, or I'll have like a cup of ice cream, something like that. So it kind of just really kind of depends on what mood I'm in. But yeah, when you're talking about pie, pecan pie all day, bruh. All right, and now for the last segment on episode 54 of the Undrafted podcast. This is some bull jive. Wednesday night during the Cavs-Astros game in Houston, a young child was hit with a foul ball after Cubs outfielder Albert Almora Jr. hit a line drive that went straight into the stands. Now, the ball eventually hit a toddler sitting about 7 rows up, and Almora, along with everybody in the stadium, was visibly and understandably shaken. Now, according to reports, the child is okay, thank God. But this is the thing. How much more is it going to take for Major League Baseball to require netting across the length of the stands, from foul pole to foul pole? How much longer are we going to have to see this? Because we've already seen somebody die from getting hit with a baseball in the stands. Last year, Linda Goldblum, who was celebrating her 79th birthday and her 59th wedding anniversary at a Dodgers game, was hit in the head by a foul ball and she died of a brain hemorrhage. Now, if this woman dying at the hands of the negligence of Major League Baseball was not enough to make them wake up and change policy, do they really want the blood of a child on their hands? This is a 100% preventable problem. And I don't want to hear about it not being cost effective and this and that and the other and all that bull jive because have you seen the size of some of these baseball contracts? Mike Trout just signed a 12-year, $430 million deal with the Angels. Bryce Harper just agreed upon a 13-year, $330 million contract with the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, I could go on and on and on about the amount of money that Major League Baseball is throwing at these dudes. And I'm not blaming the players one bit. Not at all. Get your money, bruh. And to be honest with you, I bet if you were to poll a number of anonymous Major League Baseball players, they would tell you, I would bet that it's a number close to about 100% that would tell you they fully support extending the nets up and out from foul pole to foul pole to prevent this kind of situation from happening, because the players, they don't want to see people get hurt either. They know the force that these baseballs are coming out with. I mean, they get hit with them all the time. So, yes, the players know better than anybody the amount of damage that these baseballs can do when they hit you. Now, while I'm not blaming the players at all for this, I'm placing 100% of the blame squarely on the shoulders of Major League Baseball and their negligence to solve this problem. And to make matters worse, if you get hit with a foul ball at a Major League Baseball stadium, there's a really, really, really good chance you or your family won't be able to recover any damages from the team because of legal precedents and laws that are set in place to protect the teams in these kinds of incidents. According to the Boston Globe, a 2014 Bloomberg analysis of foul ball-related injuries said that almost 1,750 fans a year are injured due to batted balls at all Major League Baseball stadiums. Now, most of these injuries are minor, like a bruised hand or a bloodied lip, something like that. But does Major League Baseball really want to keep bull jiving and let this thing get worse? Linda Goldblum isn't the first person to die from getting struck by a foul ball at a Major League Baseball park. And unless the MLB does more to prevent incidents like this from reoccurring, unfortunately, she won't be the last. Take me out to the ball game. That's all fine and dandy. But Major League Baseball not extending the netting to prevent more people from getting hit? That's some bull jive. Well, that's my time for this episode of the Undrafted Podcast. I want to take this time to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the gifts, the talents, and the resources to do this podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to tune in. And I don't have a Bible verse for you today, but I want to encourage you to read one of my favorite chapters in one of my favorite books in the Bible, Psalm 91. Man, I love it. And remember, do your best and let God handle the rest. Be blessed.